But because he had given his word to his partners that it would be finished and that we would do certain things, and I would tell the employees that and say, look, the only reason we're here is because Mike gave his word. That's it. It's the only reason. If he hadn't given his word, I'd be on the beach right now, swimming with turtles. I said, I wouldn't be here with you guys in the heat. And we did it during COVID, and we were in masks and steel-toed boots and hard hats. And I remember pouring the first slab going, oh my God, we have 15 more slabs to go. This is never going to end.
If you're a real estate agent earning $200,000 a year and you want to grow your passive income, this show is for you. Learn secrets other agents use and hear from experts in our field who will guide you on your journey to investing in assets like apartment communities so you can take your commissions and turn them into cash flow. Here's your host, Randall. Let's dive in.
Hey, welcome back. It's good to have you on today. We're having a conversation today with Dr. Jennifer Salisbury. She is a nuclear engineer, and we talk about real estate, which is great to have someone with that type of mind on the show to see how she handles a lot of the processes and things that they work on. So a lot of landlording in her background. They're doing development projects. The most recent thing that we were talking about is 5 acres that they bought in Canada for an RV park, and just her process of working through that. Great conversation, and I hope you get something out of the show. If you would go on, rate and review, it helps a ton to bring out great guests anywhere you listen to podcasts. And without further ado, let's jump on, talk to Dr. Jennifer Salisbury. Here we go. Right on. So not sure if you have, the title kind of explains like what we're doing here. But I've been a broker for a long time and a real estate investor longer than that. And so the whole gist of the show is like, turn your commission into cash flow, go invest and do something, like buy some property, do something. So looks like you're well-versed in that, and you have been doing that for a long time.
I'm excited that you're talking to some of the great people that I've been talking to. And about my podcast. The only reason I even started this podcast was that I had so many people approaching us going, how on earth are you doing rentals in Canada when during COVID you didn't even go back to Canada for 3 years? Mm-hmm. And I self-manage. I don't have a property manager. And so now I have a team on the ground, right? Yeah. So, but there was just so many people approaching us going, how do we do this? How do we avoid bad tenants? How do we set up systems? How do we actually do this? And it was so many questions over, multiple years. And I just said, you know what, I should start a YouTube channel. And my daughter said, no, you want to start a podcast, which of course now has spun off into a YouTube channel, ironically. Yeah. But I speak to both sides of the border because the rules in Canada are not the same as the US. Some of them are very different. Like Canada doesn't have a 1031 exchange. There's no vehicle to defer capital gains. It's when you sell a property, that's it. They get their money. Yeah. Period.
Also, I was talking, I had may have been a retail operator who I had on, but it wasn't just the no capital, no sale, but the debt is different, right? It's like a 5-year term max or something on a floating rate.
Yeah, it's really interesting. In the US, you can get a 30-year mortgage locked in and there's no term. That's it. The amortization length is it. And in Canada, they do a term, and it's 5 years. And the way they do that is Canada avoided the mortgage crisis. They really didn't have a mortgage crisis there in 2008, 2009, 10, 11. So that one of the things they did was they implemented a stress test. So for any lending institution, they basically do a varying escalation of payments, and can your cash flow and can your income support this graduated scale of debt, and beyond a contingency, let's say. And then they say, okay, well, you max term is 5 years, and then in 5 years you must either refinance or do something. You have to do something. They will not let you hold it long term anymore.
This is the private equity side of me thinking, like, it seems like there would be a big push to have a third party like fund established from private equity that lends long-term money. And there'd just be a massive amount of people who want that.
And there is private equity in Canada, so it's highly regulated. Let's see, their real estate IT, REIT. I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's
Real estate investment trust.
that's it.
REIT?
Real estate, yeah, it's the REIT. So they do have REITs in Canada, and but they're quite expensive, as a person that wants money from a REIT. But then they're very highly regulated, right? So that it's not just, it's basically a mortgage-backed security. I mean, that's what it is.
It is a security. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So it's interesting how Canada looks at a lot of these things very differently. But yeah, so they've implemented the 5-year term. And so right now what's happening, and just even looking in Canada, is that you've got people who are still locked into their super low rates, but very soon they're all going to have to refinance to the 5, 6, 7% rates. I mean, several of our mortgages in Canada are at 6% now, and we put them on 1 year because why not? If it's down in 1 year, or if it's the same in 1 year,
what is
why
that?
not?
Okay, so just in general, then what happens with the? Oh, I lost the question now. No. Okay, so you're 1 year. You're going to do a 1 year term. Like, how much cost is that adding to your refinance? Like when you're doing that, or do you not have the refinance cost? How does that work?
No, I don't. It's not the same as an extension, right? So if we do a 1 year closed, which is typically what we'll do, is a 1 year closed and go, okay, well, within 60 days, 90 days of that 1 year, which, happens pretty quickly. We're talking 9-10 months.
Exactly.
And we go back around, and what we've done now is, because we have, mortgages, and we've actually aligned them all with the same lender, which is ironic. We don't always do it that way, but right now they're all aligned with the same lender. And because we've done this so many times, that everything is aligned to the same renewal period. Before, they were all over the year.
Yeah.
And so now we're just doing it. And so, but it gives us more power, saying, hey, we're a bigger client, we've got more debt, you've got security on all these properties, for a 1 year, give us a better rate. And so sometimes they will give us a better rate, and maybe not for a 1 year, but for 2, 3, or 4. But again, we're looking at this going, okay, there's an election on both sides of the border. There's an election in the US, there's an election in Canada, lots and lots of stuff happening on not only the Federal Reserve side, but also the Bank of Canada. Interest rates and inflation are the talk of the day. And so, maybe we won't do a 1 year term next time. Maybe we'll do a 4 year. But having said that, we're also doing a development of an RV park up in Canada that we are, my husband and I create community. That's what we do. And so we're creating a 48 pad RV park that can, quite frankly, be turned into a tiny home community, because I think that's the next way that we're doing affordable housing. Yeah. Affordable housing cannot be built, in my opinion. We can talk more about that.
Yeah, we should for sure.
Yeah.
Let's take it back though. Let's kick off and talk about just like what you're working at. You live in Hawaii. You've been buying in Canada.
We live in Hawaii.
All right. So you're Canadian. Is that what I gather?
So I was born American, but then I married a Canadian.
All right.
And during the recession, during the 2008-2009 recession, we were living here on Maui, having gotten married. And we could see there was no work here. There was nothing here. It was like rats jumping off a ship, and it was everybody's flocking to the airport. Literally, they would just leave their houses and leave. And so we ran to Canada, which is where he's from. He's from British Columbia area. And so we went up there. Now, of course, I was a complete fish out of water. I had never been to Canada before I met him 18 years ago. And so then we ended up staying almost 10 years, give or take 8 or 9 years. And boy, Canadians are funny. They've got different words for things, and they're always saying sorry, and pronounce things differently. And anyway, they've got their whole little language.
Yeah.
So, but so that's what happened. And then, but he had bought a piece of property in South Maui in 1995 to develop some homes or some condos or something. And in 2015, when the recession started turning around and the economy on Maui had recovered from the recession, because it hit Hawaii really hard. The worst part of the recession in Hawaii was actually 2011. So we saw it coming in 2006. 2007, we were already in full recession here, even though it hadn't hit the mainland yet. And so remember, when economic times are tough, the first thing people do is cancel their vacations.
Yeah.
And because tourist industry here is like the main economic driver, it hit here hard. So anyway, 2015, we ended up coming back to Maui to build out this development. And Mike sort of worked on it for a while, and they recovered it. And then 2018, I jumped in full time when we got our final approvals. And then we've been building that. It took us 5 years full time, both he and I. And it was a grind because he was the general contractor and the developer. And had we not been there every single day, it was tough, Randall, I'll tell you.
What kind of development was it?
Because so it was eight fourplexes. So it's luxury condos, Class A buildings. And it's called Paradise Ridge. If you want to see it, it's paradiseridgemaui.com. And it was 42,000 square foot of living space, 9-foot ceilings or above. The upper units were
massive. 42,000 square feet of living space on 60. What is that? 32 units?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's massive.
Half were 2-bedroom, just 1,250 square feet. And then the other half were 3-bedroom, almost 1,400 square feet.
Yeah.
Plus the pool house, plus landscaping, plus the retaining walls, because it was built basically on Blue Rock. So
I don't know. What is Blue Rock? Is that good?
Blue Rock is it's volcano.
Okay.
We built it on a volcano.
Yeah. All right. I'm like, is it easy to dig through, or is it like impossible to dig through? Yeah.
No, we did a lot of hammering and made all the neighbors super mad for a long time, but that was my job, was to work with people. So, and as a result of that, Mike and I both won awards. So we're now award-winning real estate investors, which is pretty incredible to say. Yeah. But it's perseverance. And had we not done what we did, it would still be a field.
I always think about that of biting the bullet. I don't know how that worked out financially for you guys, if it was a big win or if it was like
huge loss.
Yeah. Huge loss. But you take it, and I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, where you have almost like a loss leader. Like it now you're recognized, like you did it, you can talk about it, you have this massive story you can say things about, and you won an award on the back end. So I'm kind of curious, like, would you do that again, or maybe on a smaller scale, or let me frame it in the sense of, like, I'm a guy and I want to get into like retail development, and this one deal, it might be my prize, like it's a sore spot in the city, and if I redo it, I may lose money, but then I'm like renowned. Okay. Like, would you recommend that approach as your marketing strategy?
When you weigh out the grief to dollars ratio, you have to include everything that is not on your balance sheet and your income statement. And that includes lost sleep, that includes lost time with kids, stress levels, when I couldn't get something, when we couldn't get a permit or we couldn't get an approval or whatever, I would literally get in my car and go and do a sit-in at the person's office and be pleasant, right? Like, because in this world, as soon as you lose your cool, you've lost.
Yeah.
You've lost. And so if the grief to dollars ratio works in that, then I would say do it. But you have to know going in, it's a grind. It's a grind, and it is not easy. You've got to put lots of time and effort and attention, and you've got to be absolutely fully engaged. And as a result of that, do you get credibility? Of course. But do you get money at the end? You might get some money. You might get wages. The thing is, you've got now credibility with other sponsors and other GPs, and you've got other folks that now go, wow, look at, you've earned your stripes. And that's almost in this business. If you want to get into new construction, you've almost got to get a spot where you can earn your stripes. And it's a real tough thing to say. And honestly, Mike and I, my husband and I we had earned our stripes before this. We didn't really need this project. But because he had given his word to his partners that it would be finished and that we would do certain things. And I would tell the employees that and say, look, the only reason we're here is because Mike gave his word. That's it. It's the only reason. If he hadn't given his word, I'd be on the beach right now, swimming with turtles. I said, I wouldn't be here with you guys in the heat. And, we did it during COVID, and we were in masks and steel-toed boots and hard hats. And I mean, I remember pouring the first slab going, oh my God, we have 15 more slabs to go. This is never going to end.
Oh my goodness. Well, congrats
Yeah,
on persevering through that. But you said something else that now we should probably touch on. Like
sure.
you didn't need to do this project, right? So how did you get started in real estate? Were you buying properties? Were you doing properties before you guys moved back to Canada? And so you've always been in real estate. Like, what's the backstory there? Well, let's hit
Well,
the high levels.
yeah, you bet. So I grew up in the military, I went to the Naval Academy. And so I was the lemming in the cog of the machine, not entrepreneurial at all. I met this cowboy, this entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur from Canada. And he was the one that was going, hey, if we do this, then we can make a bit of money, or let me build a house and we'll move into the basement and we'll rent upstairs and they'll pay the mortgage and we can, leverage that and do it again. We got to the point where in Canada, when we had run away from the recession in the US, we got to the point where we couldn't sell the houses because that's what we were doing. We were building a house, moving in, and then selling them.
Yeah.
And so we got really proficient in moving, but then we couldn't sell it. The market kind of flatlined up in Canada. And it was like, what are we going to do? We're running out of cash. We're paying a hard money lender, 14% interest. At that time, that was good. And so we just needed to figure out. So anyway, we figured out there was a niche in our area, professionals with pets. There was nowhere for them to live and they wanted these bigger units. And so it was like, hey, why don't I put out an ad and see if we can rent to a family that has a dog? And it worked great. And so guess what? That was the name of the game in 2010. And so we still rent to people with pets. I'm a dog lover myself. And so that was sort of the niche that we found. So we had to change our business model to renting. And so then that's what we kept doing was then we would rent, put long-term renters in, and then went back to the bank and refinanced and said, okay, we want to take out, this much money and we want to leverage it and build another house that has 2 suites or 3 suites in it and keep going. And so that's exactly what we did. And that's exactly why we have a portfolio in Canada.
Yeah. So you still have some of those assets?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So is the main push now you're talking about RV or mobile home park? Is the main push consistently been single family or multi-family below like 5 to 10 units type thing? Or what has been the big ownership portfolio?
For sure. So what we ended up doing was we reevaluated so it was about 2016, 2017. We really wanted to look, we just sort of did an audit of our rentals and cost per square foot and what was actually making us the most money and also the least amount of interactions, like what was the best maintenance and admin one. And so it was pretty clear that anything for us less than 4 units needed to be sold. We needed to just say, you know what, anything that was a 2 or a 3-plex, we didn't have any single family homes at that point. We need to just sell it and move on, leverage into the other units. So that's when we went 4s and above. So 4-plexes and higher, 12-plex.
What's the biggest single asset then? Like unit count?
12.
12. Okay. So still you're not getting in the 100 to 200 unit, like large scale sort of deal.
No.
And do you still cater to, or have you niched down still to like, we are the pet friendly landlords, or is that just happens to be something that's in the listing that's like pets accepted? Or do you like have a dedicated like landing page, pets accept like .com or so, like what is it?
No, it's for us, where we are in Canada is a very small market, and we know our market very well. And in fact, we're always hesitant when we're going outside that market because the rules change, right? Watch your assumptions. And I go, as soon as we're going to shift to Vancouver or Greater Kelowna or anything outside of our market or Vancouver Island, somewhere in there, it's like, watch your assumptions because, maybe pet friendly there isn't what they need. Yeah. It seems that in all of British Columbia and beyond, it seems that nurses are needed so badly, especially in the rural areas. And so there's a lot of catering to travel nurses.
Are you guys doing some of the midterm?
We can. I'm not really a big fan of short-term rentals. It's too hard on the units.
Yeah.
It's really hard on the units, especially here on Maui. I'm not even touching short-term rentals here. It's long-term. People here on Maui I want them to dig in. In Canada, it's a little bit different. And I'll admit that one of the reasons why we have supported traveling nurses in the past is our daughter's a nurse.
Okay.
She's in that program, and I can see her grinding, going, "Oh my gosh, I have to work, so much because we're short-staffed." And it's like, okay, if I can help bring in one more person, then why not? Why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I just did. Sorry, go ahead.
We can support the travel nurses, and we have.
Yeah. No, it's just one of those. Again, I had some furnished finders on, and they were talking about that. Like, that's a big thing that they do. But again, you have to be furnished. And we've got some units here in San Antonio that we always consider it. And then we're like, okay, but then you got to furnish it. And how often do you have to turn over your furniture and like maintain the unit? And so I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Like, it sounds good, but the management is increased. So it's kind of like a lifestyle sort of decision. If you want to be like always on board, or, pay 30-40% for someone else to manage it.
It's a different level of engagement. Short-term rentals in general. Now, when you're renting to short-term professionals, that's in a niche all its own. When you're traveling nurses, they're not out partying every night. They're there working. They're tired. Yep. And so, travel nurses that have a small pet, and let's say they bring their spouse, and the spouse works from home, get them comfortable. And that's always what we're looking at is, what's the best way we can make you guys comfortable, get you to dig in. And several times we've had people extend a couple times and go, "You know what? We really like it here. We like the weather. We like this. We like that." And so that's exactly what we want. I want people who are more invested in their quality of life.
Yeah. All right, let's talk some tactics then. Like, I want to get some nitty gritty stuff, because I know you talk rentals all the time. So you clearly have some systems in place, and you have some things, as you alluded to a minute ago. You set up your podcast because so many people were asking you, like, how do we do this?
Yeah.
So, like, what are some of the top, I guess, tools that you use? And literally, if I came to you and said, "Hey, I want to start this," like, where do you start? Maybe we'll go down the line, and you can kind of tell me how I should get started in the rental game, or how you would recommend get started.
So the biggest thing, so if you're in this scenario, do you already own property or not?
Sure. Yeah, I own some property. Yeah.
Okay. So if you already own some property, then you already have property that you want to manage. And so if you're going to self-manage, you cannot do it all on your own. Everybody thinks that they can. Guess what? You cannot. And so the number one rule I have in self-managing is you've got to have a team. You've got to have a team. Okay. If you are the one on the phone at 2 a.m. because of a clogged toilet, or, a hot water tank is burst, that is a recipe for failure in my mind. So you've got to have a team. If there are people in your realm, in your market, that want to help, whether it be a handyman, it be your bookkeeper, you've got maybe a neighbor that, we find that some folks that are retired, they like to have a project that they tinker on. Fantastic. So then they would be part of the response team, is kind of how I look at it, and say, you know what? And I pay my response team. I pay them in advance to be on call, and I pay them for several hours every month. Just say, look, if we don't need you, great, take that money and that's fine. But I've never not needed them, if that makes sense. So you've got to have a team. Yeah.
Okay. So the main players on your team, and how much do you pay them? Who are the main players that you get on your team, and how much do you pay them?
So you've got to have a bookkeeper. You've got to have a bookkeeper. You've got to have someone. So you've got to have someone who's handy, whether it's an actual handyman or someone that's helping somebody to shovel snow in the dead of winter, or put salt out, right? And then you've got to have a cleaner, but that doesn't have to be a dedicated cleaner. It can just be someone. But I've found that the team size is 3.
Okay.
That's who you want. And you can be one of the 3, but if you're not one of the 3, that's even better.
Yeah. So you're remote. I mean, bookkeeping can be done remote. Do you do all the books?
I do all the books. I do all the money management. My folks do not touch money. And yeah, so I do everything. The only one of them, my people have a credit card, a corporate credit card. So if they've got to go buy parts, but then we're signed up on all of the local, building supply places. If they need, let's say they need paint, well, my guy can go and get paint. Any of them can go and get paint.
Yeah.
For example, right?
Yeah.
So just as an aside, yeah.
So you mentioned that you pay them in advance. So like typically, I mean, I love the idea of having a neighbor and having like I've been flipping houses for a long time, and I always make friends with the neighbors, like anybody that's around. Like, hey, if anything's happening, just give me a call, whatever. But on the rental side, I love the fact that, again, if you're remote, you can simply have your neighbor who is going over there, mowing the yard, doing whatever, that they're getting eyes on the house. They can see what's happening and then report back to you. So what do you pay someone like that in advance for 3 hours of their time, even if you don't use them?
So I actually pay in advance. I pay for 5 hours on the first of each month for that month. And so I think we pay our handyman standby guy, I think we pay him $35 an hour. But again, that's for typically what we do. Our strategy is whatever the going rate is, I pay them more.
Yeah.
Because I want them to be excited to come and deal with our stuff.
Yeah.
And so we deliberately pay more. And we pay right on time. Like they give me the invoice, they'll have their money either that day or maybe the next day, but usually the same day.
Yeah.
But we overpay on purpose.
Okay. So you build that in. So if a property's cash flowing $400 a month, but you're buying more than one unit, so it should be more than that ideally, right? If you're buying multi units, then you're just factoring in like $150 goes straight out the door to your handyman on a monthly basis.
Yeah. See, in my calculation, if we're making, let's say $1,000 for a fourplex in a month, my management fees and all our repairs and everything in advance includes that.
Okay.
Includes it. It's in the budget. Like that, in my opinion, that is part of the system.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, all right. So I set up my team. I found a place. I looked, I have, all right, we're going to get it rented out. What kind of tools are you using? Either technology, how are you doing applications? How are you approving people? Like, let's again, get into the nitty gritty, because if somebody's listening, they're like, I don't even know what I would be doing.
Yeah.
What are you using that is allowing you to do what you do?
So as a seasoned landlord, I've got websites set up. And what I did was very simply, I Googled tenancy application, just like a lot of people do. And I made a website on it. And so when I advertise my units, I just say the action item for these potential tenants is to go to the website and set up an application. We have found over the years, we don't do showings in advance. We pre-screen for deal breakers and we tell them straight up. But I also tell them, look, it's a pre-screen. You don't need to send me pay stubs. You don't need to send me an ID. But you do need to send me, where are you working? Why are you leaving? Tell me how many heartbeats are in the unit. If you've got 8 kids and 4 pit bulls, that ain't going to work. Right. But if they say, hey, it's a mom and a dad and 2 kids, and we have a little chihuahua and 2 cars, great. Let's set up a showing. Sounds like it's going to work.
Yeah.
Right. But if there are any deal breakers along the way, so we pre-screen in advance off the website. So that's how we do it.
How are you handling showings then? So, well, before we go there. All right. So is it automated? Like you have a website or you're advertising on MLS. Do they automatically go to your website from whoever you're listed with, and then they just can see more pictures or whatever, kind of see your program, and then they're apply now, and then the pre-screen is them applying. Okay. So that's how that works. And then once they have all their information, that goes to you or somebody on your team?
It goes to the whole team.
Okay.
It goes to everybody, because I want to make sure that if anybody sees a deal breaker in there, they go, hey, this person just fill in the blank, had a major problem, or, hey, I know this person, they just had a breakup. They're actually great. Or I know their employer. That also happens. Yeah.
Okay. So it goes to the team, and that's all internal communication. And then you guys are reaching out to them to schedule. Like, how do they actually get into the unit?
Yeah. So they reach out. One of the team will work. One of the team of 3 will arrange to meet with the potential tenant and look at the unit. Because that's the other issue, is that we can screen them all day long. But if they get up there and they go, oh my gosh, you're right next to, a bar or something that is not ideal for them, or, hey, you know, I don't like that there's, you know, I have to park right next to the unit, or, you know, there's all kinds of weird little deal breakers for the tenant as well. So the unit's got to work for them.
Yeah. Okay. But you don't have a remote access system set up. So somebody physically meets them, and you don't have it listed with a real estate broker or agent.
No.
So, okay.
No, but the team is also helping screen them. I always say, I want you guys to report back. How's their car look? If their car is full of empty fast food, you know, empties, guess what? How you do anything is how you do everything. That's exactly how the unit's going to look.
Yeah.
Right. If they show up late, or they're in, you know, dirty clothes, or, you know, wife beater and just, you know, grimy mug boots and things like that. Well, guess what? That's exactly how it's going to be with the unit. And so there is a housekeeping standard too, where we're watching, we're seeing the speed of their engagement. We're seeing how prompt they are. Did they dress for the showing? Because if they don't care, they're not going to care about the unit either.
Yeah, that's smart. I mean, that's just on a not just psychological level, but like a I don't know, just interpersonal level. Like, are you teaching that to your people when they're or have they? Okay, so they've been with you long enough, they know what you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I teach them how to do it. I mean, we even go to the point where it's like, look, if we have an empty unit and my pictures are, say, 5, 6, 7 years old, which happens, right? We've had tenants that just bought a house. Actually, it just happened. I've got a vacancy now. And it's like, okay, you guys, you've got to go in. I need you to take new photos of the unit. Do you know how to take photos of a unit? They go, no, just snap a few photos. No. You take photos of a unit very strategically, and we go through this, and we go through the whole thing. I said, you should end up giving me about 50 pictures. They go, how on earth are you going to give me 50 pictures? I said, well, if I tell you the whole strategy of exactly how you take photos, including closing the toilet seat, then, right? Which is little simple things like that. When, you know, a potential tenant, and they see a toilet seat up, that, again, how you do anything is how you do everything. They see that, they go, oh, they don't care. Next unit. You know,
That's
every
always
little
funny
detail counts.
When I look at listings and I see toilet seats up, or I'll see like a picture uploaded sideways, and it's like, well, come on, basic,
really?
come on, yes, come on,
come on.
Yeah. Okay, so then they come into your system. So it sounds like you don't have a ton of turnover though. Like, are you trying to get tenants in there? Is it just unique to the size of your units, or is it just the area?
Our strategy.
Okay.
So
are you signing 3-year leases?
Nope. Signing 1-year lease, and we do rent increases every year.
Okay.
The tenants know they're coming.
Yep.
And no, our strategy is, let's make the units as comfortable as they possibly can. Help them mount their TVs on the wall. Help them, you know, get the wall hangers on the wall so that they can dig in. And we do annual maintenance, and we listen to people. You know, when we're near the unit, I happen to run into somebody at the grocery store, which happens. I go, is everything okay in your unit? Is there anything we need to look at for you? But the whole strategy is, I want people to be with us as long as their housing journey will allow it. And the number one reason we lose people is because they buy something, and that's fine. That's perfect, you know, but we don't have a whole lot of turnover.
Okay. So it sounds like you're not necessarily using a ton of technology. You don't have some like rental. Do you use like a rent ready appfolio or anything to manage all of your, it's all just like, I love it. Like you're just like on a spreadsheet, and this is my tenants and this is what I got going on
a spreadsheet. Now we can, and I've had, you know, people reach out. So we are self-managing, sort of manually at this point. But again, that's the strategy. I don't have 500 units.
Yeah.
Right. So if I did have 500 units, it would be a lot different strategy, you know, and I would scale differently.
Yeah.
Can we go up to 500 units and have an asset manager that works with my bookkeeper? Yeah, I can do that. But I choose, again, we have crafted the way that we want to do our business specifically because we had an end goal in mind the whole time.
What's the end goal?
Oh, a boat up in Desolation Sound, north of Vancouver.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to in 3 days.
That's what I heard. So goal has been achieved, and now it's off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I love that. So, all right. So before we get to the boat, because I have it like highlighted on my page to talk about because I really want to know more about it. I
Okay.
interviewed somebody the other day. She's doing she's buying a condo on a ship that goes around the world and her
Yeah.
kids learn on it. Have you heard of this?
Cool. Yes.
Oh
And I
man.
looked at it a lot going, how would our quality of life be?
Yeah. So we had a chat about that. Anyway, it would just we had a
I love it.
longer conversation about that than about real estate. It's like, yeah. Um, But anyway, before we get into that, so how many units do you have, and how did you craft your goal so that you have, again, it sounds like lifestyle design. You're like, this is how we want our lives to look.
Yeah.
This is how many units I need to get to, and this is how we're going to structure it. So kind of walk me through that process.
So when Mike and I left Maui and deliberately went up to Canada and had to basically regroup, in that recession, Mike and I both lost houses. I'll say that again. We both had houses foreclosed on.
Yeah.
So it is not, success is a poor teacher. It makes smart people think they can't fail. That's Bill Gates.
Yeah.
You cannot, escape this. There is always a downside, and there's a reason why there's a foreclosure clause in every mortgage and every lending statement. I'm not saying that to frighten people, but it does happen. So when we went to Canada, we had to figure out what are we actually going to do to regroup. And so we leveraged Mike's skills as a carpenter and became general contractor both in British Columbia. And then when we came back here in Hawaii, he became a general contractor as well. Doors, as far as doors, we're less than 50. So, and it fluctuates because we're building stuff,
Yeah.
we're still, it's always moving, and, it will be by the end of the year, it'll be probably 100,
Yeah.
less than 100. So for us, it's always moving. Can we scale up? Yeah, we can scale up. But do we want to? We're to the point now where we're always looking at what's going to make us happy.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not just the money, it's the time, it's the energy, I love my cup of coffee in the morning, right? That's what I live for, is having a great cup of coffee and a conversation. It's not necessarily making, $10,000 in a transaction. That is fun. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you got to craft it what it looks like. So we really did some soul searching about 10 years ago in the middle of the recession recovery and went, what is it that really makes us happy? And it was having a good cup of coffee on a boat, looking at our favorite tree in Desolation Sound, period.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, everything we do is going to be, how do we actually make that happen? And it was very strategic. And there's some days where I'm like, there's no way we're ever going to do this. But here we are. And
Nice.
The boat is in the marina right now, waiting for us. And the coffee, I've got so much Hawaiian coffee on that boat. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, so again, to put this in terms that anyone listening, so you say, I need to have X amount of passive income coming in order for me to get out of this race and rat race, if you want to call it, right?
Right.
And so you guys got to that point, even if it took you 10 years, like it took you 10 years and now you're there, right? And so that's incredible. One, I applaud you guys again for, sticking to the plan and doing that. And two, now let's talk about the boat. Like, what are you going to do? Like, how big is the boat? Like, what is it? Is it a sailboat? Are you
Oh,
cruising around? Is it?
it's a 45-foot Sea Ray, and it's a
Okay.
2001. So it's an older boat that has barely been used. The engine hours are quite low. And so I think it was set up for charters.
Yeah.
But, I'm a former nuclear engineer. I mean, that's what I did in the Navy. And so my analytical skill set, the first thing I did when we were doing due diligence on this boat was give me the logs, give me the maintenance records. Well, there wasn't a log. It was just a history of all the mechanics invoices. And so I went, this is not a captain's log. This is just, the mechanics are doing this and changing this filter and, adjusting all of this. And so it's a power boat. And, we had a smaller Sea Ray years ago that we sold before COVID, before we came back to do the big build here on Maui. And we were always knowing that it was such a small boat because it was me and Mike. And at the time we had our beloved golden retriever German Shepherd named Mac. And so it was the three of us. And it was such a small boat that we couldn't actually have people stay with us. We didn't have a proper dining table. But Mike would always make all this incredible food. You get prawns out of the water and clams and, fish and just Dungeness crabs. I mean, it's just crazy. So the whole idea here was that we wanted to be able to have people share with us this boating experience. And that was part of the equation, was the boat had to be big enough that it wasn't just us. And so now we've achieved that. So our boat sleeps more than just us. So there you go.
Are you guys planning to just stay and or are you just going to be traveling around?
The boat is in Canada, so it's north of Vancouver, and actually that's the discussion at the moment. So according to the according to the insurance people right now, Mike and I are newbies in the boating world because it's been so long since we've run boats. But Mike ran boats his whole life, and I'm US Navy trained. But according to insurance, it's quite stale. So for now, we're just going to stay inside of Vancouver Island, just sort of in that proper. We might actually run to Vancouver. We may run up higher to the Queen Charlotte Islands. I don't know, or to Haida Gwaii. I don't know if we will or not, but can. But the whole idea is to just, all my podcast recording equipment is on the boat right now. So I don't have a mic.
Yeah. Love it.
So next year we had talked, maybe we're going to run to, I think we're going to make a run to Victoria, BC next year and have coffee in front of the Empress Hotel. That was one of Mike's bucket list items. But we've also talked about maybe going with a flotilla up to Alaska. So I don't know.
What's the range? So you're doing this, is this your summer activity? And then you're going back
summer
to
activity. Yeah. Summer activity. So
2-3 months at a time, something.
Yeah, exactly. So it's usually May long weekend. So like Memorial Day, roughly to around Labor Day is when we'll start. And we just happen to be back on Maui for a week. I've actually got some meetings going on here for Maui United Way post-fire stuff. Yeah. And so that's why I'm back here. But we're going right back up to Canada Sunday. Yeah. So the whole idea is to just, fair weather boat it, and then during the winter, take the boat out of the water, very likely, and
dry dock it and be,
just put it up on blocks and then regroup for next year. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to do any of that, but that's part of the adventure of having the boat.
Yeah. No, it's love it. I love boating. I haven't done anything like that. I don't even know what's the range on a 45 footer,
you know what? I honestly, I don't know if I can answer that just yet because we're so new to the boat and we're realizing that the fuel tanks are a little smaller than we thought. Our water tanks are smaller than we thought, but we have a water maker. We just need to get the water maker going. We're still learning the boat. We just bought it 4 months ago. And so I just told Mike, I said, as we're learning the boat, let's not break anything. Let's just learn the boat. But it's great because we've got lots of folks that are around us going, hey, mechanics and such saying, look, this isn't working. Something's not right here, but we don't want to take it any further if we can avoid it. But, I also, the first thing I do is get into the manuals because that's what I did as a nuclear engineer was let's look for the schematic, where's it broken?
That's an interesting background. Got some history and stories there, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
For another podcast maybe, but, well, I mean, I don't know. Again, I could talk to you about that in the traveling quite a bit. To me, it's one of those things that if you know your why, which you guys figured out your why and you guys made a plan, then you can create your life around that plan. I highly recommend anyone taking the time that doesn't have that, take the time to sit down and figure that out because it gives you a purpose-driven, set of goals that you guys can go after. So again, congrats on getting there.
Thank you.
As far as rentals and real estate go, anything else you have going on that, you got this big project, 60 pad sites. Is that what I heard you say?
48 is at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still working with.
Tell me, we got a few minutes left. Tell me the background on that and like what's going on there.
So Mike and I we were looking for property on both sides of the border, and actually we're still looking for property on Maui to set up something similar, maybe not an RV park, but more like a tiny home community, similar in nature, but just different name. So we're working on that on both sides of the border. And in Canada, we found it faster. So we found 5 acres in the same general area as where our rentals are, same area. And found this 5 acres with a renovated home on it. And but it had quite the, let's say, collection on it.
Yeah.
Four of the
Things.
5, yeah, four
Yeah.
of the 5 acres had about 10 feet thick of treasures. And so we've had to
That's a lot of
remove
treasure.
the treasures, deal with the treasures, lots. I mean, I'm talking decades worth of collecting everything from cars to boats to bicycles to air conditioning units. I mean, there was one pile that was nothing but kitchen sinks and bathtubs, just all kinds of stuff that was just
Did you
like, oh my
sell any of
goodness.
this? Or is it just like get it out as fast as you can? Or was there
So
something?
it's a combo. It's a
Yeah.
combo. And so this is, again, part of the team. You know, we talked to the team before we bought it and said, okay, guys, what are you interested in helping with? And so there were some people who knew, like, the bikes went to someone who does nothing but repair, and they teach other people how to repair bikes. And so we said, come on up, see what's good. Because there were like 300 bikes there.
Wow.
And so some of them went for scrap. And then we had somebody who said, hey, I will strip everything if we can split the scrap. And so we started making these deals like this, trying to clear this hoard. And now we're to the point where we're finally, like, we couldn't even get a proper survey done because there was stuff everywhere. And
Wow.
we bought
Yeah.
the property in January. We're 6 months, 7 months into it now. Yeah, so I think by the time the weather changes, we've probably got 2 or 3 more months before the weather actually starts to change. Once the ground starts to freeze or it becomes just too muddy, then we just have to stop. And that's okay. And that's okay. So we're moving forward on development, working with health inspectors, the safety authority. There's all kinds of things that have to be done to do any development anywhere. And that's part of the grind that we learned at Paradise Ridge, on a grander scale.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's right now we're projected to have 48, and that number was because of space, and we don't want the lots to be any smaller than that. We
Yeah.
could probably fit more in, but then that affects water capacity and sewer capacity.
So I was going
And
to ask you about. Yeah.
yeah, so it kind of, again, you have to weigh the grief to dollars ratio. It's like, how small do you want somebody's little yard to be? If they've got a little dog, are you going to give them 6 square feet, for their dog to go pee? Or do you want, maybe we should put in fire pits? That was another thing, is they said, let's increase the quality of life. Let's increase community. Let's put in a bit of a community house where if people wanted to have a birthday party that's not in their unit, have it in the community house. Well, perfect. And that's really what I like, is when neighbors are really looking after each other and they're a part of each other's life. That is just so powerful as a part of a community. And that's what Mike and I create, is being a part of that community. It's awesome.
That is, well, I hear of a lot of people moving into mobile home parks and RV parks, and you're getting lot rent. So just on the financial side of it, like, how did you guys underwrite this deal, and how did you get to a number of, like, we could pay X because we're going to have so much rent?
Right.
I mean, that's one thing on the nitty gritty. And then on the other side, it's like, I'm curious, the development process in Canada compared to.
The development, I mean, a budget is a budget. It's just now a matter of, like I said, right now the number is 48. But if we decide that the number goes up, well, then I have to add in more electrical connections. And each electrical connection right now is budgeted at 15,000 per.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so if I add 4 more units and we go to 52, then that means I now have to add $60,000 more to my development budget, which then directly impacts how much more I have to lend or have to borrow from a lender. And so it all impacts every bit of it. And so we're trying to do a bit of a phased approach. I was trying to do 6 units based on our existing infrastructure. And I think everybody has violently agreeing that we can't scale up at all based on our existing infrastructure. It's too limited. It's not going to take it. It's going to fail. If we start hooking up more on the existing well, it's going to fail. So I said, okay, that's fine. So if all we do this year, all we do is clear the hoard, we've already improved the property enough.
Yeah.
We've already improved the property enough, because every single stage you have to make sure that the balance sheet and the income statement work every time. Yeah. So And we've done that. So then it changes what next year looks like. It changes what our lending requirements are next year. But that's okay, because that's part of the benefit. Instead of 48 RV spots, maybe we'll only do 20. That's reality. Maybe we'll only do one well and one septic next year, because that's what I can afford. Stabilize that and then leverage it, the next year or two. That's okay.
So, all right. Break it down for me then. So did you pay cash for the land?
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't get, okay. Because they didn't know if you had financed it and you're like, yeah, it's okay, we'll wait. And I assume you got a decent deal on this land.
We did. We got
Okay.
the decent deal. And here's the other thing that I must tell you on a lot of these real estate deals is that they were years in the making, years. And the reason why that it took so long, and most of these deals take a long time, is because, we know what numbers work for us. And the sellers want what they want. And I get it. That's fine. But my number is this. And so at some point in time, over time, the number that we have, it's like, you know what? What do they say? Half of something is better than all of nothing.
Yeah.
And so the person that we were working with for 2 years on this 5 acres was given a terminal health diagnosis. And he called us and said, do you still want to buy my property? And Mike said, I do. And actually at that point, he was already talking with somebody else about another property. And he said, look, I'm only going to buy one. I'm only going to buy one.
Mhm.
So if you want me to buy yours, then we need to talk right away. And so we ended up going that way. And I know he wanted more. The original price that the seller wanted was over double what we paid for it. But our number, especially because of the hoard, and we couldn't even get a proper survey. I mean, there were so many things along with this. The drainage was not good on the property, so we've had to really focus on improving it. But so did we get a deal? Yeah, we got a deal, but we also inherited a headache that was instant. We instantly had to make investments. We instantly had our civil contractor basically move there and deal with the hoard and the drainage and meet all the neighbors, right? All the neighbors. And so he has a little chart for me, and I've met the neighbors as well, many of them. And he goes, this person, and we know who's, not excited about what we're doing. But I also know that they have not seen the Salisburys in action. And I know what I know. Sorry, Peter. I know what we create, and I know the value that we bring. And when, whatever said neighbor is not happy with us, fast forward 2-3 years, when their son or daughter is old enough to be on their own, but not really too far away, they're going to be happy that we have where we have, or they have an elderly parent who's still independent and wants to drive, but they want them to be close enough, but not under the same roof. And so what we're creating is the next level of affordable housing, because affordable housing is, in my opinion, the land costs are too high to build affordable housing. Affordable housing can't be built anymore. We're past that. So the only thing that we can do in affordable housing is things like what we're doing, this RV park or a tiny home community, or it is the existing stock that has not been renovated yet. That is the only affordable housing that we actually have. Can't be built. The land costs and the infrastructure costs and the bureaucracy costs are too high. That's in the markets that I'm at. Maybe not in San Antonio.
No, I mean, I just think about this a lot, because it's building a better widget. It's like, how do you solve that problem? Because I think about that a lot, and rehabbing a bunch of houses. I got to the point, one, dealing with the contractors and the struggle, right?
Right.
I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I started looking kind of similar to what you're doing at land, but to move mobile homes on, because it's just like, okay, it's done. It's there. It's done. It's more affordable than something that I could do in the city limits. So a couple of quick questions on the development. Again, going in, obviously, the more units you can get, not obvious, but the more units you can get up to a certain point, then the better it is for the development most of the time. How do you know that you have capacity for water, sewer? Is this, because on 5 acres here, if this was a deal that I'm looking at in San Antonio, one, I'm calling direct to the water supplier. Do we have city water, or we get put it on a well? And then I got to call my well guy and be like, hey, do we have capacity to put like 3 wells on this 5 acres, whatever. So like, you guys did all of that due diligence, I assume. And
We do. We did all of it. Yeah.
And so are you going to have city water? You going to have well water? What are you guys going to do out there?
So in Canada, it's all rural. So it'll
Okay.
be on a septic, but it's going to be on a giant septic, which will have multiple tanks. And
Mhm.
basically, it's a new technology that is just coming into that area.
Okay.
So we're going to end up doing regional, basically local infrastructure. But then we also had to map out with the local health authority, where's the other wells? We can't put a septic, within 1,000 feet of the other wells,
Yeah.
right? So we had to map it all out. And of course, all that costs money and all of it takes
Yeah.
time. But you know what? So there were 20 properties around our 5 acres, and I went, I want them all.
Yeah.
Do them all. And so, and whatever the cost was, I think it was $50 a thing. And not everybody had a well, right? Some of them have little private water systems and stuff. And so, but again, we had to organize that and figure that out. So where are the septics? Where are the wells? Also highways, all our drainage and our driveways, we had to realign. Actually, we just got our permit to realign the access way, because think about it. If we have 48 RVers, or, tenants that are
Yeah.
living there, plus our main house. So that's 49 more vehicles, or more, could be
Yeah.
up to 100 vehicles. And so we had to really look at the highway impact. Also, another thing was mail. Can we offer mail to our tenants? Right now, the answer is no, but I had to reach out. Also, our insurer. That was the biggest thing, is our insurer, and say, look, this is what we want to do. Do you guys cover this? Their answer was, we can cover up to a point. And I think we're at that point now. But as soon as we start putting the actual pads in and we start bringing in our tenants, our RVers, the answer is no, that we have to switch carriers. So I've already started that awkward conversation with the next insurer, knowing that everybody's got to have the right conversations going on. But it doesn't go beyond, also with electric. That's the other thing, is that, do we have the electric capacity? Do we have to upgrade transformers? Do we have to upgrade the infrastructure in this area to support 48 pads, or whatever that final number is? And so, none of this is easy. But that's how we figured it out, is asking a lot of questions. And anytime I talk with somebody, the last thing I always say is, hey, is there anybody else you think I should be talking to about this? Is there anybody else that I should call, even, just to have a conversation? And the answer is usually yes, or maybe I'll get a phone call back and say, look, if you haven't talked to the safety authority yet, or you haven't talked to the the electrical inspector yet, or whatever it is, I was just calling, just to, introduce myself. This is who I am. This is what we're trying to do. Love to have you out. Maybe we can walk the property. Or, earlier this year when we bought it, the hoard was too big. And so we just said, look, if you'd like to come out, but there's nothing I can show you at the
Send
moment.
you a
All you're going to
drone
be seeing
photo.
is stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, so maybe we'll have you out in the fall, after we've cleared everything. And actually we've got trees that are laying on the property now. So I have to now go back to the province and try to get a timber stamp, so that we can actually mark the wood and sell the wood. And so this is the next thing, where it's like, who knew I was going to need a timber mark? It's a head on a hammer that you hit the end of the log, so that the log is marked, that you can sell it. So who knew that we were going to get into that? But it's like, you know what? And sometimes you fail, sometimes you fumble, and it's like, okay. So my number one question when I'm doing due diligence on this stuff, both pre-close and post-close, is the same question. Educate me on the process. Educate me on the process. Where should I go next?
Yeah.
And we mess up, and sometimes we mess up, and it's hard.
Here's
Really hurts.
excuse me. I have two things.
Sure.
So one, it sounds like you guys this is your deal. You don't have other outside investors, or if you do, they are very, very understanding, but like how you described it's how I've done things, and you're just going through the process. You figure it out as you go. But if you have a bunch of investors hounding you on progress reports and status updates, like, it doesn't really lend well for this type, the way you guys have structured the purchase, because you bought it and you're like, we're going to figure it out as we go, and we're okay, because long term, this is our baby, is what it sounds like, right?
Right.
So I just want to kind of clarify that it's not,
Sure.
You didn't, yeah.
Well, let me be clear on this one that I'm talking about. Mike and I are the only players involved. We're the only ones. However, we're going to have to take on a lender, because when we get our final number and our final budget, I don't have that number. So we're going to have to take on a lender.
Yeah.
And so we will, right? We will. And let me be clear. I may be flippant about what I'm saying and figuring it out and the timber stamp and all that, but I did due diligence like a champ before we even went on it. Cause I thought, okay, if this 5 acres has got a problem with title or a problem with something that we need to know, if there's a deal breaker in here, I need to know it before we close, before we remove subjects. So,
I didn't mean to say
No,
that you
no.
sounded flippant. I mean it in the sense of you are afforded the ability to continuously learn on the fly and have those conversations.
Yeah.
And rather than like, I have to have a 1-year closing window so that I can make sure that I can get all these permits and I got to get rezoned. And I mean, that's like somebody who's got investors that don't want capital risk at the,
Yeah.
So anyway, I just want to clarify that just because it's one of those things.
But let me speak to having lenders and wanting status updates. Let me speak to that, because that was the situation that we had in the Paradise Ridge build on Maui. And I had to figure out a way to communicate on a regular, predictable, consistent basis with all of the players, not just the lenders, the insurers, the inspectors, the realtors, everybody. And so every Friday, I would send out an email every Friday. And it was the same thing going, here's where we're at here. Here's where, and it was a 3-week look ahead. Every Friday I sent one out for years. And the thing is, they always knew. And it was like, okay, here's coming up. The doors are inbound. The glass is inbound. We're going to be pouring the pad on this one. The pool equipment has arrived. And it was this huge, huge list. These subs are working in this building. These subs are working in this building. We're having the building inspector come out this day. So there was never a question on what was happening and when. And so they knew.
Yeah.
They knew. And the other thing I kept was a project log. Here's my project log. This is project log number 20 for Paradise Ridge. I started it in 2018, and every day I would write in it any neighbor complaint, any inspector, any comments, any, God forbid, injuries. Thankfully we didn't have any major injuries on the build, but anything that was project worthy went in there, including all of my Friday updates. Right in there, pasted it right in. And
That's awesome. Yeah.
So, but again,
someone like you on my team. Can you do all those notes?
But what I did was, because the way I did the journal, think about it, the way I did this journal, this is not a binder. It's not a spiral. This is an actual hardbound journal.
Yeah.
And everything in here is written and emailed. What it is I've created a legal document.
Yeah.
Right. And so God forbid we end up going to court over something. The judge is going to see my 20 journals and go, holy crap, we don't want to mess with her and her system. So that's how I take with my lenders going, this is how I operate. How you do anything is how you do everything. Every Friday, you're going to get an update email from me. Does it take a long time to do that update email? Yes, but it saves them all from calling me and saying, what's happening, what's happening, what's happening. They don't have to call anymore. They know on Friday they're going to get an update email. They know where it's at. Like literally every Friday they knew where it was. So that's, I invented this to just say, look, I'm going to stop this insanity of incessant calling and wondering what's going on. They know exactly where everything is at any one time, period.
Do you do that with your rentals as well?
Yes, I do. In fact, here's the log for the rentals.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's great. I think it's a great system. Again, it's one of those things like once you have that system in place, we have for all of ours, we do these like massive folders that have all kinds of different things within each. So each part of the process has, the purchase, then the acquisition, the rehab, the rental, all that stuff is in there. And it's good to keep track of all that stuff if you have
and you can do it all on Drive. You can do it all on Google Drive. And I have many because we're remote. So I have all of our listing, all of our leases, all the rent increases are all on Drive. I don't have to, when I get up on the boat and we have Starlink, if somebody, when we do rent increases this year, it's all electronic. So I have some stuff that's hard copy, but I also am trying very hard to shift over to more electronic.
How good is Starlink, huh?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Totally changed it. Last summer was the first summer we were on a friend's boat because we didn't have our boat yet. And so we were all up there and everybody had Starlink. And so we were just learning it.
Yeah.
And so, because, how much of a power draw is it? Can you have it on all the time? Is it finicky? Well, we found there was a couple of really cloudy days and the power draw spiked because it was searching. It was searching for the satellites, right? And so everybody had to turn their Starlink off. Somebody got on the radio and said, hey guys, check your Starlink because it's draining your batteries. And anyway, we all had to learn
a new system.
Starlink last year. It was
funny.
awesome.
Oh, the boating problems,
right?
Connectivity.
Total first world problems. Total first world problems.
I want to say one more thing about, you said mail a minute ago.
Yeah.
Like in your front house, you can't just have a mailbox and you guys give unit 1, 2, 3 through 48, and it's one address for the main street, and it all goes. That's wild.
So remember, where we're building the RV park is not in a municipality. And even if it was in a municipality, then you'd have to have a separate conversation with either US Post Office or, in my case, Canada Post. Well, right now they've got rural post boxes. So the community post boxes where they go and the letter carrier will just input everything remotely. I have not started that conversation yet because I don't know the number. But when we do, I can ask them. And what they're probably going to do is they're probably going to make me buy a couple of those boxes if this is an option. Because right now I don't know if it is. But it's not time to ask that question yet.
Yeah. No, I was just,
we're getting there.
It makes sense now the way you described it.
Yeah.
Because they may not want to deliver 48 pieces of mail. Yeah.
Right.
It's a capacity
problem.
Okay.
Yeah, we had to, it was really interesting because Paradise Ridge has a gate and has a hydraulic gate. And so we had to get special openers for the postal service for USPS to actually go through the gate and then go up, and because they deliver mail daily in South Maui. And so it was, and then of course you talk about fair housing, the mailboxes, any common area has to be perfect, within the reach requirements, can't be too low, can't be too high, can't be too sloped. And I know way more about fair housing than I ever thought I needed to be. And so, which lends perfect to the podcast because we talk about fair housing, we talk about reasonable accommodations, we talk about emotional support animals, service animals. We talk about all that stuff and it's like, oh my gosh, how did we get into this? You need a PhD just to do real estate these days.
Yeah. Well, you have that, so, right?
Well, I do, but not everybody does.
Well, Dr. Jennifer Salisbury, I really appreciate you jumping on and talking about just everything. We're
everything.
Just kind of talking rentals, talking about development, all kinds of stuff. So I wish you the best on your journey. I hope you guys have a great time up there, and it sounds amazing. So enjoy that and enjoy the fruits of your labor. So we'll catch up soon. I want to know how the 48 unit, maybe 52 unit comes out.
Yep. No, I'd love to. I didn't realize you were in San Antonio, Randall.
I am. Yeah.
Where in San Antonio are you?
I'm just north. Do you know where McAllister Park is? Like how well do you know the town? I
know I-35. My parents live in Shirts.
Yeah. Close to it. Shirts. Really? Yeah. They're just down the street. I have many projects over there.
Awesome.
Yeah. So if you ever come to town, let me know. Let's catch up.
We were just there a couple of weeks ago. Had I known, I would have said something. Hey, just as an aside, I wanted to tell you that I walked into Shirt City Hall really to show Michael the difference between developing on Maui and developing in Texas. And we walked into Shirt City Hall and I said, my name's Jennifer Salisbury. I'm a real estate developer. I'm a real estate contractor. We provide housing and I have Class A units ready to go and I have Class B plans ready to go, apartments that we want to build in Canada. And I said, I have both sets. I'd like to speak to someone about building housing here in Shirts. And I stopped. I had a planner sitting in front of me within 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And even then she said, I could have the mayor, the fire chief, and the building inspector meet with you tomorrow if you want. And if you already have your plans, then for a commercial building, it would take us 2 weeks to issue a building permit. And Mike's jaw was like, I just wanted to show you the difference on where you're building.
Yeah. But your product that you built is probably not going to hit the same price point in Shirts.
Watch your assumptions.
I don't know. You tell me what your cost to build is. Like, I'll go down, I'll find some land. We can do something. Like,
we've talked about it. We've talked about doing all kinds of stuff out. My parents live at 3009 and 78 and in that area. And so I would love to do something, whether it's in Universal City or up near Seguin, in what's now farmland, but very soon there's all kinds of infrastructure out there and highways to support. But again, it's the same questions. It's the same process. And how much work do we really want to do? How much money do we really need to make to be happy. If our happy place is already defined, careful how much you're chasing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Good advice. I want to end it on that. Did you know that 80% of the agents we speak with got into real estate in order to gain passive income so they could obtain financial freedom and become work optional? If you want to stay up to date, the best way is to make sure you're subscribed. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and do it now. We'll catch you on the next episode.